I had finished it.
Oh, okay.
And
You'll have to give us a signal.
Ready?
Tell us what you and the other men did to celebrate America's traditional family holidays such as Thanksgiving and Christmas.
it was hard to keep track of those occasions because you wouldn't have turkey for Thanksgiving, for example. But I did have some remarkable experiences one way and another. On April the 12th of 1945, I attended a memorial service for President Roosevelt. He died, of course. And at Shape, there was a memorial service forward. Hostilities still going on. You see, the E-Day hadn't come yet. And General Eisenhower was at that service, and I was pleased to be able to find a way to get to it and attend it. And on May the 8th, when the E-Day came, I was had gone back into France and was at the Reims Cathedral and Shape and service. Then, of course, the E-Day has come now, and June the 10th, I went to a place I had never been, but I knew the name of the man who lived there. He was named Franz Lehar, Lehar, and he was a musician and played beautiful music. A lot of people will remember the name of Lehar. And so I went with a couple of other American officers, and we went up to Bad Ischl, Badishuhl, and that's where he lived. And he had written some very famous music, and that was used by the Germans but he was not a Nazi, and I guess the opposite. And we had a very happy visit with friends and Lehar and his wife. And I asked him if he would go to the piano and play one of his numbers. He said he hadn't been to the piano for days and days. And it suggested this would be a good time to do it again, and he did. And I had him play one of his well-known numbers. Then I got into very heavily into an aspect of military government that I was supposed to have had some training for, and that was the licensing of non-Nazi German newspapers. And we did that all over parts of Germany, licensed in Ingolstadt, in Kempten, and Bayreuth. And I even kept the names of editors that we checked, were convinced would not be Nazi in any way, would be for the New German. One of my strong recollections took place at the Lenzburg prison. And that was where a lot of Nazis were to be executed. At that time, I was doing some work for Stars and Stripes in addition to what else I was doing. I was connected with Stars and Stripes for a couple of months that summer. And at Lenzburg prison, 28 Nazi killers in the concentration camps were to be executed. 14 the first day, 14 the second day, 7 in the morning, 7 in the afternoon. They were required to go up the steps go up the steps to a platform and stand on that platform while a rope was put around the neck. And then after the neck was tied with a rope, the platform was pulled, and there he hung until he was dead. And by that time, that period, we had licensed a good many new German newspapers. And I thought it would be very desirable to have some of the editors, not newly licensed, to come for the overnight for the second day and see the executions with their own eyes, so that when they when they were printed in their papers, it was what they had seen and had written, described themselves. So others felt the same way, and after the executions of the 12 of the one in the morning and afternoon of the first day, I got on the telephone, got some other officers on the telephone. We called German editors all over Bavaria and elsewhere, and told them what was going to happen and urged them to come. And one memory that I'll never forget was about one of the editors that we had recently put on the job. And he told me afterwards that he could hardly believe his eyes, because what he saw was this. He said he had been in a concentration camp and was one of those that the Nazis were going to kill. But he got out, waited for a chance, and ran out of the building, the quarters. But they had already begun to shoot in another part of the building. And he ran along the road to get out, and he heard them coming. And he dropped down along the side of the road as if he were dead. And he said, as the killers came out, one of them kicked him. And just, in a sense, testing him. And he just acted like he was completely lifeless. And the killer went on. He told me that the fellow he saw, one of the ones he saw hang that day, was the one who had kicked him as he came along the road. He said he could hardly believe his eyes in that experience. So it told you what strange and odd things can happen. One thing I do want to refer to is the time I went to the hostilities were over now, and a lot of American military included different aspects of life. And some of them were military chaplains. Some of them were even had a religious background before they'd gotten into the service. And there were a lot of Catholic chaplains in the uniform. And they wanted to go down, they had made arrangements to go down to Rome. And because most of them had never been there, and this was an opportunity where they got a special train set up and did have a place to start it in Germany and right near Switzerland and head for Rome. Well, it seemed to me that this was a chance that maybe I ought to make the most of it. We were going to be gone only about 3 days altogether, down and at Rome and then right back. So I went with them. And the time came when we were in front of the Vatican. The Pope was coming around, shaking hands with people. And many of them had boxes that they had crucifixes in. And the Pope was going to bless those boxes of crucifixes. So those chaplains in the military could go back home and hand these to friends, relatives, and so on. And they would be ones that the Pope had blessed. And I didn't have any crucifixes to have him bless, but I did have a little toy monkey that I carried in my pocket that I'd gotten just before I left to go into the service from a neighbor who had been to India. And they had gotten this little monkey in India. He's a sweet little fellow, holding up his hands, praying, and sitting on his backside with his knees up and his elbows down on the top of his knees. And there he is. Well, I felt that I'd like to carry something in the military experience that always with me. So I had him in my pocket. And when I couldn't put any crucifixes before the Pope, I did put my hands up like some of them had, and the little monkey was in the top hand like that. And when he came along, he pressed his hand on top of mine as if to say, "What are you holding there?" He didn't say anything, but that's how I interpreted it. So I opened up my hand and held up the little monkey, praying right to the Pope. And the Pope, Pius the 12th, Roman numeral 10 and then 2-1, smiled, not a big laugh, but a very pleasant change in expression. And so then he, after blessing the monkey, so to speak, with a smile at least, and he went on. But the monkey's always, I never see him that I am not with Pope the 12th, and Pius the 12th, and all those chaplains from the military who had gone to Rome for just a short time.
Could I see that?
Yes, you may, by all means.
Actually, you know what it looked like? It looked like the monkey speak no evil.
Yeah.
Hear no evil, see no evil, speak no evil. That's what we're looking for.
I think that's maybe why I think you're right. Hear no evil, see no evil, speak no
Speak
evil.
no evil.
And maybe the Pope was already familiar with that thought.
I wondered, how did you return to the United States after the war, in the war?
I'll go into that, but there's one other thing I do want to tell you about that, I may find another one or two, but I do want to tell you about this. I was assigned, down to Munich for a while in the military government days. And there was a lake down there, south of Munich that, we had a headquarters on, and I had gone down there and was there. And there came a day when I was to have take at least attend a gathering of officers, almost to the Swiss line down south of Munich. And there was I got a military vehicle and had to go down there. And I left the place where I was staying before daylight. And I came to a little place. I looked it up afterward to make dead sure, because I never wanted to forget the name of this place. It was Wolfratshausen. Wolfratshausen. Hausen being house, you know, Wolfratshausen. As I say, I got away and started before daylight. And the sun was just beginning to come up when we got to Wolfert's house. And there was I looked ahead and I saw someone hands on a wheelbarrow some kind. And I got closer, and I could see that it was a woman coming this way toward me. I could see her face. And we had to get over a little, quite a bit, so as not to bother her, the woman. And I saw that she had a hand on one handle, and over on the other side there was no hand. She just had a long roping thing to hold it with. And that was how she was moving, apparently, manure from a barn out to the field. And I thought, I took off my hat to her, so to speak, thinking that there was partially an explanation of why the Germans had done as well as they had done in the war. She wasn't a fighter, but she was an example of how hard the German people could work, up before daylight and hauling that lumber. Believe it or not, after I had gone some miles to where the meeting was held, been there through the lunch hour and all afternoon, and then came back to Wilfred's house. Believe it or not, it was sundown now, getting almost dark. And this woman was still out with her wheelbarrow, moving that manure with that arm that didn't have a hand, as well as the arm that did have a hand. And I'll never forget that experience, because it told me something about the German people that was in many ways on the plus side. And that was all I could do then, not to stop and say something to her. I couldn't have said very much in German anyway, but there it was.
Could you please tell us about your military rank and your decorations, and especially your campaign decorations?
I entered the service as a captain and rose eventually to lieutenant colonel. And I did get some decorations. I got some from both England and France, and from the United States as well.
Could you tell us anything about those decorations? What they did for, and what were they?
The American one was the Bronze Star, and I had gone through a very serious bombing experience, and that helped with the restoration of that situation, people who were hurt and moved and so on.
Was that in Germany? Or?
No, that was in England. In England. I want to tell you also about an experience I had with when I was connected with the Stars and Stripes. I went to Nuremberg. They had war crimes trial there in Nuremberg, and it was called the International Military Tribunal. And England and France and the United States all went together, and they had a lot of the Nazi leaders, not just killers, but leaders like Goring and Rudolf Hess and Ribbentrop and so on. I have the names of many of them. And they had them there being tried. An American who had was on the Supreme Court, Justice Robert Jackson, was one of the top people at the tribunal. Of course, many of them were convicted. Hermann Goring was to be executed, but he killed himself with a suicide just before time to be executed. And Hitler, of course, remember, killed himself. He didn't. He knew what was coming, and so he in a sense, took advantage of it because he didn't want to go through it. The war crimes trial there at Nuremberg dealt with almost 200 Nazi killer leaders and so on. So I didn't get to stay there very long, but I did have a couple of days there and saw what was taking place. Then the time came, of course, when I was to come back. In 1946, I was still licensing German newspapers in places like Bamberg and Coburg and so on, Landshut, and in July, I see my notes show that I got the Army Commendation Medal. In July and August, I was at a place called Altdorf, and the Stars and Stripes was being published there then. And August, first few days in August, I went down to the memorable experience. I never will forget it. And one day, I was to go to the Holy Land, so to speak. I was in Italy at the time, assigned at Rome briefly. This is 1946. And I got on a plane in Rome, military plane, and I told the pilot that while I had seen the Roman ruins on the ground, had been into the Colosseum and so on, it would be a memorable experience just to see it from the air as I left. And he said, "Oh yes, we can do that." And he said, "I'll take you over the top of Mount Vesuvius as well." So we did that. And I saw the ruins of Rome down on the ground. Time came after having gone along the leg of Italy. We went over toward Greece to head toward the Holy Land, Egypt, and so on. And believe it or not, about midday, I could look down and see the Acropolis in Venice, in Athens, in Rome, and in Greece. And I was impressed to think that I had just seen Rome, and now I was seeing the things that had made the architecture of Greece so famous in the world. And the plane went along, and turned over across the waters, and headed up the Nile. And just as the sun was setting, we circled over the pyramid and the Sphinx. And I said to myself, I cannot believe that in one day I'm seeing the historic places of Rome, Greece, and Egypt in one showing of the sun one day. And it was a memorable experience because it put together so many years of history in just a few hours.
Were there things that you would do differently if you could do them over again?
Maybe so, but I hadn't thought of that today. I'll do that the next time. I should tell you that I was in 1946 in October. Well, actually in August I went on terminal leave, and then in October was relieved of active duty at Fort Sheridan, just south of Chicago, or in the Chicago area, Fort Sheridan. It's really north rather than south.
Mm-hmm.
And
What was the most difficult thing that you had to do during the military period?
well, the most difficult thing I had to do was to leave my home, my wife and my 2 children. And I still, in some ways, regret the almost 4 years that I was gone, and they were without my help and assistance.
Is there any one thing that stands out as your most successful achievement in the military?
Nothing jumps out, just especially the think about that, and the next time we meet, I'll try to have it for you.
How did you learn about VE Day and what was your reaction to it?
That'd be what,
VE Day, Victory and Work.
we knew every day what was going on. The psychological warfare people were kept fully informed about the development. So
So you heard about it pretty fast.
that's right. Or practically shared it.
How about VJ Day? Where were you then? What was your reaction to it?
That was Japan. You mean?
Then
There's
And something here that does have the
I thought I had one handy there that had VE Day on it, but I guess I have had so much collected on the war that I brought back and serviced it. I thought I had that handy here, but I don't have.
do you remember where you were?
Yeah, I was in the edge of Germany and France,
I was at the border.
very close to the border.
What was your opinion of the use of the atomic bomb when it was used against the Japanese civilians in August of '45?
Well, I regretted that because it seemed to me unfortunate that there are people who were not in the military itself had to pay the price of the atomic bomb. Women and children, and some of those probably opposed to what their military was doing, and they were many of them killed by the atomic bomb.
Has your opinion changed over the last 50 years on the use of the atomic bomb? You have to change your mind.
I don't like the idea of that kind of. Fact is, I'm much pleased about the tendency toward peace in the world. Now, I understand there are places where you don't have peace. I know what's going on in Bosnia, for example. I know what happened in the down there in where some of our troops lost their lives a couple of years ago and so on.
The Desert Storm?
Desert Storm and all. But on the whole, it's a less fighting world than it was. And it does seem to me that that's all that is good.
Do you have a disability rating or a pension or anything like that?
No,
Do you have any opinions or feelings about our nation's military status or its policies today?
well, I think that it's more and more desirable that we use our forces for better achievements than just the military. Maybe I'm wrong about this, but I would certainly consider using our forces to stop the bringing in of across the border different things that shouldn't be brought into this country from Cuba and South America and so on. And I think that they would achieve a lot more if we use the military to do that sort of thing and just simply have them marching around and praying for nothing.
Use them more as a policing,
Yeah.
facility.
I don't know that I would get much support on this, but I'd rather see crime in the streets brought under control by if the military would do anything but march in the streets. Patrol, exactly. I think we gain a benefit, and I think the military would be pleased to have a chance to do something worthwhile for the country.
What is your opinion of the Veterans Administration? You ever had any contact with them?
Veterans Administration. Yes, a few times, and I do have some insurance that provided, and glad to support it, and go to VFW, American Legion Affairs. I consider those worth supporting.
Would you like to tell us about how your family supported you during your military service?
What I did was get the military, the United States government paying the military forces. I got them to send practically, not quite all of it, but most of my pay back to my home, so that it could be used for supporting the family. And they did do that.
How did your experience during World War II affect your life since that time?
Well, it informed me about a lot of things that I wouldn't have been informed about otherwise. And when I came back to the Post-Express, I carried information that I couldn't have had any other way.
Do you feel your wartime contribution to the nation has been appreciated?
Appreciated by
The people of the United States,
well, I
your
think,
country.
generally speaking, I'd say yes to that.
Well, Irving, I want to thank you for this interview and for cooperating on this project. And that is the end of the interview.
Well, thank